time for Bringing the Heat with Trey Lyle.
Welcome on into another edition of Bringing the Heat. I'm Trey Lyle. Caleb Barnes will join me in a little bit to discuss the latest news and notes in all of NASCAR. But first, we go into the Inferno, maintaining a similar series to we had last week. We had John Newby last week. We're getting to know the friends of Frontstretch. This time, a Frontstretch alum, man who's joined us a lot on Happy Hour, TikTok star. I think he's just a celebrity at this point. SiriusXM radio NASCAR producer and host Davey Segal joins us talking about his journey, his childhood fanhood of Kevin Harvick, all the way to why and how he became a TikTok star. Davey Segal heads into the Inferno.
Now it's time for
Welcome to the second edition of the Frontstretch Awards. I am your host, Davey Segal.
To Go Into the Inferno with Trey.
Typically, you hear this man, whether it's on TikTok, SiriusXM, his own podcast, but now he is in the Inferno. Another friend of Frontstretch, former Frontstretch alum, Davey Segal at Davey Center joins us for this episode. Davey, thanks so much for doing this. Feel like it's gonna be a fun time for the fans to get to know you a little bit more. Let's start with your journey. So, growing up, you were a NASCAR fan. It appears you were a big Kevin Harvick fan, if I'm not mistaken. So, two-part question: when did you get into NASCAR? And then two, why was Kevin Harvick just your guy?
First of all, great to be with you, Trey. It's like coming back home. The storm is coming and the storm has arrived. So thank you for having me here. Yes, going back to the days when I was a wee lad, I think I was 4, 5-ish. It was around 2000, 2001. My dad was a huge NASCAR fan and a racing fan. So that's kind of how I got into things. And I just remember it always being on TV. You know, my dad would always go to races without me for the most part when I was a little kid. And I didn't really know all the intricacies of things, but I did know that Dale Earnhardt was kind of the guy that always won. And when he passed away, I was kind of too young to comprehend the fact that he died in the way that he did and he wouldn't be racing anymore. You know, I'm 4 or 5 years old. My brain can't really process that. All I knew from what my parents told me was that Dale wasn't going to be racing anymore. So I was like, okay. Harvick obviously took over for him. So that was a logical kind of rooting interest there. But that was not really the main reason as to why I started rooting for him. It was because the next year in 2002, he had a special paint scheme that had ET on the car. I have a diecast behind me somewhere. He had it in the Busch Series and the Cup Series that same weekend at Bristol. It was like a pink, reddish ET 29 car in Busch and a blue 29 ET car in Cup. I don't think he did well that weekend, either race, if memory serves. Again, I was 6, 7 years old, if that. But that was my favorite movie at the time. And I was just freaking out because, oh my God, E.T.'s on a car. And I just kept telling that to my parents. And from then on, it kind of just blossomed into a very unhealthy obsession over that man and this sport and everything that kind of came with it. And it ended up morphing into a career of sorts that I'm still trying to make happen. So it's kind of maybe a long story short or short story long, depending on how you look at it. But it's kind of what brought me here.
Yeah, I was going to ask, I have some photos that I'm not going to share during this interview, but I like to do diligent research. And so you did have a nice display, but this leisure time, you're from the Maryland area, then you go all the way out to Michigan State University, and was your plan all along to be in journalism, in sportscasting? Was that the plan going into Michigan State, or was it something else and you just happened to fall down this path?
So I'll go back a little bit to answer that question because my thought was always, I'm going to be a race car driver. You know, why not? Jewish kid from the DC area, that's normal, right? Not really. So it was one random time. I think I was at summer camp, and I was sitting on the bus, and I don't know why or how or what, but I remember it hit me that I probably was not going to be a race car driver. And I was devastated. I was just sitting on the bus by myself, silently kind of crying, softly, quietly. And I was like, wow, my dream, I'm a little kid and my dreams are shattered. It's not going to happen because, as we know now, it takes a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of sacrifice, a lot of resources, a lot of things to make that happen. And I didn't live in the right place. I didn't know the right people. I wasn't really willing to move my life somewhere else to try to make that happen when has been no history of that in my family. So that's neither here nor there. Then one Mother's Day, I think it was, I was on a walk around the C&O Canal here in DC with my parents, and my mom kind of just brought up offhand, I think I was in middle school or high school. I think middle school. And she mentioned how I've always been a good writer for my age and I should maybe start writing about NASCAR. So I was like, okay, sure, why not? And you probably know who this is, Trey, and a lot of people listening might. Jason Schultz, who now works for Trackhouse Racing on the content side, he's like 4 or 5 years younger than me, maybe. He had a website at the time called turn4racingnews.com. And we were just friends through Twitter, naturally. And I started blogging and writing on his website just about NASCAR. I think it was in late middle school or early high school. And that kind of morphed into doing some more of that. I knew I wanted to have like a Big Ten sports school atmosphere type of feel. And Michigan State kind of checked all the boxes there. And I ended up enrolling in the journalism school there, joined the student radio station, started up the NASCAR content team there, started writing about stuff, started talking on the air about stuff, and did a little bit of more writing while I was there, obviously being a journalism major, did some television work as well, and then kind of blossomed into stuff after school. So to answer your question, yes, going into MSU, I did know that journalism and being on the media side of things was the path that I kind of wanted to go down. I wasn't exactly sure how that was going to happen, but I did know that at that point, working in this sport is something I wanted to do. And I felt like that avenue going down the media path was going to be the best way to do it because little Davey wasn't going to be a race car driver. Very sad.
Yeah, I feel the same way. You know, my athletic dreams got crushed at a very young age.
Yeah.
So I understand that. Davey, it leads to the path where you joined Frontstretch in, again, this is based off your LinkedIn account, January of 2017.
I got to update that thing. It's so old.
Hey, I'm doing my basic research here. You know, I'm a journalist. I have to, be have integrity or whatever that means. But you joined Frontstretch. You also joined NBC Washington, which I do want to ask you about because that got you a different sense of the things. But which is a channel. So technically, I've seen Davey Segal on my TV and didn't realize until years later that I knew Davey Segal because since I had NBC Washington as my local NBC channel or one of the local sports channels you would get. Anyways, you joined Frontstretch. How did that come together? How did good old Tom Bowles, obviously the talent level has gone down considerably, especially the guy who replaced you on, I guess, the lineage of this podcast.
Yikes.
The guy who replaced you, which is not me. It was the guy before me, and I'll just leave it at that.
Correct.
But how did you end up here at Frontstretch?
I believe it was Joseph Walken, another Frontstretch alum who's doing big things in the media world right now, working in New York City, freelancing for Forbes, doing all that cool stuff. And I think it was him who was working for Frontstretch at the time, and he kind of put my name in Tom's ear, and he was kind of recruiting me to come over there. I was like, I don't know what this is. I don't know what y'all are doing. How does this work? And lo and behold, they got me, and they hooked me in and kept me ever since. So that's how that happened. And I was there for, I think your years are right. My LinkedIn is super outdated, but all the old stuff is up to speed because I just haven't updated it in a while. So that's correct. And I worked with Frontstretch for several years. Started out doing entry lists for the week. And I remember working with Kevin Rutherford, who you know and love, Trey. And I was just like, is this really necessary? Like every week, I'm like, does anybody really care who is sponsoring Akinori Ogata and what make he's in this week? But I manually input that stuff every single week for Cup, Xfinity, and trucks. I remember that like yesterday. And got to work with a lot of cool people, do a lot of cool things, travel to a lot of cool tracks, experience a lot of awesome stuff. So that was really fun. And then on the NBC Sports Washington front, that was also during my time at Frontstretch because Frontstretch is obviously kind of like a virtual thing, right? There's no office, so to speak. And being in the DC area, I interned at ESPN 980, a local radio station in college. I also parlayed that into an internship at what was then Comcast Sportsnet Mid-Atlantic. After I graduated school, CSNMA got rebranded to NBC Sports Washington, got hired back there as a freelancer, worked there for a handful of years, doing a bunch of different things in production. I was a production assistant, so I did anything from logging tape to running Chiron to creating graphics, which is what I did for the bulk of my time towards the end for Capitals and Wizards pregame shows, sometimes for what was the Redskins, now Commanders as well. And whenever there was some NASCAR synergy going on, being an NBC affiliate, Kyle Petty got made available for interviews sometimes. Martin Truex Jr. came in studio when he was doing a Richmond Raceway promotional tour. So I got to do an in-person interview with MTJ for the first time. That was awesome. Talked to Kyle Petty a good amount, Denny Hamlin, Daniel Hemrick, some others come to mind, Kurt Busch. So that was really, really cool. And I was kind of known in that newsroom as the NASCAR guy. So whenever anything happened that was relating to DC sports, which was kind of rare in the NASCAR world, we always made sure to bring things up. So that was kind of that period of my life as it pertained to Frontstretch and NBC Sports Washington, which is now Monumental Sports because they've been bought by Ted Leonsis and his family and all that stuff. So a lot of synergy going on there, but I made it all work.
All right, before we get to the question everybody wants to ask, which you can guess what that's about. What was the moment? So I asked John Newby this. What was the first moment for you, like the pinch me moment covering NASCAR? Being a fan of it your whole life and then getting into it. Was there really like a pinch me moment where you kind of like realized, oh my God, I'm actually doing this?
It's actually it is a good question. I will say it's the cliche question, which I always ask, but I haven't thought about it. I guess now that I am thinking about it, when I did that sit down with MTJ, again, it was in studio. He may have remembered who I was, just by my face or whatever in the past, but I was still pretty young, hadn't been to a ton of races. And like you, I'd pride myself on my research. So I did a lot of research off the wall stuff about Martin Truex Jr. because this is kind of at the height of his powers, right? He's a champion. He's winning races every year. He's like the guy, one of the guys. So I wasn't going to ask the typical stuff. I wanted to ask some off the wall stuff. And I had a great time in that interview. Again, we sat down for like 15, 20 minutes in person. I just remember I asked him one question about when he watches his brother Ryan Truex, who actually recently got married. And I was like, I hear you get pretty nervous when you watch him. And he was so caught off guard by that. I remember he's like, man, you've been studying. And he was laughing. And then he gave me this really fun, cool answer on that. And I think at another couple races that year, not too far after that, in like media scrums and stuff, or even when he's coming in for a press conference, I'd be sitting off to the side or asking him a question or whatever. And you kind of know, Trey, it's like if a driver or whatever kind of recognizes you, or if they're in a bad mood, or if they're in a good mood or whatever, they'll give you a little facial expression recognition, like, hey, like, take care of me here, or like, oh, you again, or, oh, good to see you. And Martin gave me a couple smiles and like, oh, hey, good to see you, man. Like, I don't think he called me by name at that point, but it was kind of the recognition that like, okay, this dude, a champion, a future Hall of Famer, knows me, recognizes me, appreciates me, and understands that, I'm here to do a job and I'm not like out to get them or whatever. Like, I guess that was kind of the first moment where I was kind of like, not, oh my God, I've made it, but, oh, like this is happening. Like people actually remember who I am and remember what I do and appreciate my work and stuff. So I think that probably had to be the first one if I had to pick one, but I may come back to you on that.
Okay, well, we'll end with this question because I know you're you're a world celebrity. I've seen you've been asked for autographs in person.
Stop.
You despite his humility. So let's the TikTok thing. When did that, like, why did you come up with that idea? It obviously, it got you, but it kind of made you popular amongst NASCAR fans. When did you come up with the idea to recap the races like you did? And ultimately, why did you give up on it? Is it just more of it was so time consuming that it was the juice wasn't worth the squeeze in the end?
Yeah, so I'll start with the last one first. In short, yes, it was very time consuming. It just took a lot of hours of my day and my week. I would take notes during the race and kind of write a live script of sorts. And then I would pare that script down. Then I would have to input that script into a Google Doc. I would color code the Google Doc for the shirts that I would wear. Then I would have to film everything, import everything, edit everything, overlay the numbers, overlay the text, all these different things. It was a lot. And from start to finish, it would take me anywhere from, 4 to 7, 8 hours to create those things, depending on kind of the race and all that it entailed and everything. So it was a lot. And especially for something that was getting me a good amount of notoriety, but frankly, I wasn't really getting paid for it. Like TikTok, I wasn't making money off of it. NASCAR actually picked them up for a little bit, and then they ultimately decided that they were going to move on from that. So that kind of source of income dried up, and I was kind of like really busy at that time. I could have been doing a lot of different things with my time, and I was enjoying it. I really was. But I kind of was like, all right, maybe I can find other things to do 8 hours in a week. And that's kind of where I landed on that. I really enjoyed it, though, and I will never say never that they're not going to come back. Maybe one day, sometime, somewhere, they will come back, because I don't want to put that out there. But there's a lot of people that really enjoy them and still come up to me and ask when they're coming back and why I stopped and all that stuff. So I really appreciate all that.
And the Logano impersonation.
Yes, that's one thing, too, that I was kind of nervous about, because Logano does some stuff with us on Sirius, behind the wheel on TMD. And I had done interviews with him before. I did an interview with his spotter, Coleman Presley, who was the best man at his wedding. And I was like, on the interview, it was on the record. I was like, does Joey know about this? He goes, oh, yeah, I send it to him every week. I'm like, oh, God, no, please no. And he was like, it's cool. He likes him. So then I did an interview with Joey. And before we even started recording, he hops on. I'm like, hey, Joey, you got me? He's like, yeah, wear your glasses. He was all in on it. So that was funny. But the other question that you had, Trey, that I'll answer is, I started them because you probably know who this is. And depending on if you're listening, if you know who this is, Annie Agar, who started this concept on TikTok when it comes to like NFL weeks or college football meetings, that type of thing. She impersonates, different teams, different players, coaches, all that stuff. And I had watched her stuff for a while, and I always thought, and I was telling my fiance, Robin, girlfriend at the time, I was like, I feel like I could do something like that. Like maybe for NASCAR. It might be kind of cringeworthy. It might be kind of dumb, but I feel like I could maybe do that. So I did. And I was surprised at the response from it. And it got pretty good traction, and people seemed to really enjoy it. A lot of drivers really enjoyed it too. Like even Ryan Preece, who I've developed a good friendship and relationship with over the years. Whenever I see him at the track, he always gives me a how the frick are you? And so does AJ Allmendinger, and AJ's wife loves it too. So it's kind of funny how that kind of took on a life of its own. And again, I will never say never. Maybe one day I'll bring them back, or maybe a one-off if it's a race that's crazy that warrants one. But at this point in my life, I don't really know if I have the time to devote to doing that every single week. And also, as kind of cliche as it is, I'm trying to be a reputable media member out here. So, that probably didn't do great things for my reputation in terms of being a, well-respected media member, even though a lot of people understand that for what it is, which is satire, and it's all joking and good fun. I can see why some other people might not view it that way. So, yeah, that's kind of the backstory on the good old TikToks that I don't really make anymore.
Well, Davey, since you do have a job with SiriusXM and NASCAR, you got to go. You got to do your job. So there is much more we could talk about.
Hey, I got 5 more minutes if you need, Trey. For you, anything.
Okay, well, then I'll ask you about Sirius. How did that happen? How have you now been able to go from like producer to host? How is that job and role where you basically are at the track? You're at the track a lot more now. How has that role developed for you?
So it's interesting because working for SiriusXM on the NASCAR channel, I think, is probably the only full-time job in NASCAR that is in Washington, D.C. that you go into the office for, because the Sirius studios are here in D.C. The NASCAR channel is based out of D.C. There's other Sirius channels like NFL that are based out of New York, but the NASCAR channel, for whatever reason, has always been based out of here in D.C. So I ended up starting a part-time job with them while I was still working at what was NBC Sports Washington. And I had been in contact with my bosses at the time, Dom DeFrugio and Daniel Norwood, way before I worked for them, just networking at the track, letting them know who I am, what I'd like to do, all those different things. And ended up getting a part-time job with them. A full-time gig opened up, and I was kind of looking to pare down my 5 or 6 different jobs to one and get on some insurance benefits and all that stuff. And that opened up, took that, started out as an associate producer, so running the board, clipping audio, doing all those things. Trey, you know it well. And then ended up working my way up to a producer where I'm at now. And I have helped run our social media platforms for the entire time I've been there. And I do host a show as well on the weekends, Loose Ends, Nuke the House, and do some other stuff here and there on the microphone and try to kind of be a 5-tool player, a Swiss Army knife, so to speak. So I'm enjoying my time there, man. It's good stuff. It's a good place to work, good people, and being a partner of the sanctioning body. It's very fun and it's interesting to have that perspective of different things as well. You know, obviously we're not to the level of a Fox, NBC, Prime, TNT, but MRN and PRN, just like they're partners of the sanctioning body on the radio side, SiriusXM is as well. So we get a lot of cool access, and the drivers, the crew chiefs, owners, teams, everybody's very, very valuable and thankful and generous with their time when they join us on the channel. So it's fun stuff. It's good stuff. And it just so happens that it's able to keep me where I'm at right now, which is at home where my family's at. And obviously Robin's family's at too. So it's good stuff, man. Working for SiriusXM is a good time.
He also hosts a great podcast called the Victory Lane Podcast. So make sure you check that out as well. And for the folks asking, we're not talking about the Kyle Busch, the Ricky Stenhouse fight, because there's actually because we already broke it down on the front stretch. We were together. We broke it down on Happy Hour. Your perspective. We were joined by Mark Arrow as well, which hopefully shout out to him. By the way, he announced his retirement recently. Hope to have him on the pod before his last race. So I didn't want to bring up something we already talked about. That's no fun. I wanted to do the new stuff. So Davey, appreciate the time, and hope to see you soon, my man. And as always. Always fun chatting with you.
Likewise, my friend. Always a pleasure to have the storm in the house.
There you have it. That was Davey Segal in the Inferno. Thanks so much to Davey for setting that up for us. We appreciate him sparing some of his busy day for us to learn more about him. So glad to have him join us. But now let's get to What's Still Hot.
What's Still Hot? It's time to upgrade you on the latest news in NASCAR.
What's still hot? Joining me now is my producer of this, as well as typically my co-host each week, Caleb Barnes at Caleb Barnes _. Caleb, hope you're doing well. Let's get into this. So, storyline from past weekend is the feud between, I guess, put air quotes around the feud between Denny Hamlin and Ty Gibbs. Obviously, Joe Gibbs Racing really hasn't said much from a PR point of view. Both Denny said the team, essentially Joe Gibbs Racing needs to talk to him. Ty is just kind of giving a PR answer about next week. But overall, your thoughts on this saga between Ty Gibbs and Denny Hamlin?
Well, I don't think Joe Gibbs Racing necessarily needs to do anything publicly. I think they can bring the two in and have conversations with them behind closed doors. But I don't think they need to feel like they have to disclose the details of that. And it's a situation where I feel like both drivers could come together and maybe, I don't want to say maybe admit a little bit of fault, but they could come together and talk about where things could have gone better during the race. Because, Ty Gibbs, it's a teammate, but at the same time, you're racing. He's not obligated to pull out of the way just for a teammate. And I know, people complain one way or the other. People complain if he holds up his teammates. People complain if he would just pull over and let his teammates by and say that's race manipulation. So I appreciate that Ty wanted to race with his teammates, but at the same time, it was the middle of stage 2. They were racing outside the top 10. And it's again, one of those things how important really was that spot? How much was Ty learning there? So hopefully they're able to come together and have a conversation. What does sort of worry me a little bit is Ty Gibbs posting on his Instagram story, I don't know if you saw that, Trey, talking a little bit about, or the quote from the Kevin Harvick Happy Hour, the
other Happy
duplicate,
Hour,
the copycat Happy Hour podcast. Kevin Harvick, and they were talking about this might be what cost Denny Hamlin the championship this time around, and Ty Gibbs reposted that, and I think that right there is a really rough look for, I guess, for someone who's driving for your same company, much less, Denny Hamlin said it. His name is on the side of the building. So, surely Ty wouldn't do anything too rash in the next couple of weeks, would he? But at the same time, he gave that Kyle Busch answer, and that was another thing too. Ty Gibbs giving the Kyle Busch answer, but at the same time, I don't know that he's necessarily got the accolades to pull a Kyle Busch after the race like that. But at the same time, I guess it's better than him saying something that could get him in trouble. It'll be interesting to watch in the coming weeks. Hopefully, Joe Gibbs, Papa Joe can get that under control, and they can have that conversation going forward and won't have to worry about it.
Well, a guy who I guess you could say Papa Joe had to control at some points was Kyle Busch, and now Kyle Busch will have a new crew chief in 2026. As it was, Trackhouse came out yesterday and announced Randall Burnett will be the crew chief in 2026 for Connor Zilisch. Ultimately, Caleb, right decision by Trackhouse, maybe the right decision by both parties in terms of getting a separation at RCR, given the struggles of Kyle Busch this season. Were you shocked by the news? What do you think about this move for Trackhouse and Randall Burnett?
It was a little surprising that Randall Burnett's going to Trackhouse with Connor Zilisch. Not necessarily shocked at the split between him and Kyle Busch, although you could kind of have a discussion on how much of it is the cars, how much of it is the organization, how much of it is Kyle. Just it feels like every week this year since the spring, he's spun out on his own. He's had one mistake or another that more or less kind of looks like it was driver error, even if the car itself wasn't handling great. And so that split's not too surprising, but I mean, I feel like Randall Burnett hasn't shown a ton of things necessarily that would give me a ton of confidence if I'm Connor Zilisch, but I don't know. It's definitely not a win-win, but it's not a lose-lose. It's just kind of a, hey, we'll see how this goes. And Connor, I think coming in next year, obviously he's got very high expectations for how good that he's been this year, but I mean, I don't know that people necessarily would expect him to come in and be a game changer and be competing for wins on a weekly basis. I know that 8 car has had some pretty good road course setups this year, and Connor is a great road course racer. We'll see if that makes a difference on the twisty tracks in 2026. But outside of that, it's just kind of a, hey, we'll wait and see. It was a little surprising to see those two joining up for that Trackhouse team coming next year. But at the same time, I'm not going to judge it too harshly one way or the other yet.
Well, something maybe we should judge not so hard is the Penske performance in New Hampshire. It's our focus of the soundbite of the week.
Well, Tony, what angered you at the end of the race? What did you take issue with?
What the hell do you think I was mad about? Dumb little runs us clear down to the infield. He wants to about everybody else, and he's the one that drives like a little. I'm going to bust his ass.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you.
It's your track race.
It's time for the sound bites of the week.
Joey, you seem to have the dominant car early on, but once you got behind Ryan, you just could never get back in front of him. What was the difference between what you had and what the 12 had?
He just had more grip. No, he just went faster. Did everything I could do to try to get ahead of him, but just, they had a lot of speed and it worked out for him.
After the speed that Toyota showed in the first round, you guys at Penske showed up with a ton of speed. Are you proud of that effort, and where do you feel like the turnaround came from?
Yeah, I felt like we were going to be solid when we came here. This track kind of fits our wheelhouse, so kind of expected that, and it worked out.
You guys seem to always turn it on at the right time. Is this just another example of that, and are you ready for this final playoff push?
Oh, it's been 3 top 5s in a row, so I feel good about that.
Joe Logano's getting hot. Ryan Blaney wins. Josh Berry led a bunch of laps. Should alert bells be going off that Penske's going to do this again?
I don't know if I would call them alert bells. It's just like that. It's like that meme of the guy,
like Thanos.
No, it's like the guy that they meme me the guy with like the storm, like that giant like dust devil tornado behind him, and he's like, "Here it comes!" Like it's that point in the season where I think we see this every year, and even it's a weird thing with Penske because I know people talk about the playoff performance, but it doesn't really seem to start until the round of 12. And then that's whenever they start. Like, I know Joey won the Atlanta race in the early round last year, but like it feels like their dominance and their fast cars really don't start showing up till the round of 12, and that's when it carries through. And New Hampshire is such a similar track to Phoenix. We talked about it a little bit on Stock Car Scoop. This felt like I was watching the championship races from the last 2 years, with the 12, the 22 being fast on the long runs, and those Hendrick cars being fast, but still not fast enough to keep up with the Penske Fords. And so I think the maybe a little bit of the difference. You heard Joey mention the top 5 streak, and I mean, it really didn't feel like he was in that position with Bristol until the end because that race was so wild and crazy. But yeah, I mean, at this point, I don't think it should be alarming necessarily. It just continues to prove why the championship race needs to move around, why it's moving away from Phoenix this year. And that's honestly what I'm more interested to see is this year, first off, is Penske going to be able to do it again? But then next year, like, what other teams are going to find success? Or does Penske have something magic in their bag where they can figure out where they need to run well and pull that out of a hat in the playoffs and go win this every year with this next-gen car?
Well, time to wrap this podcast up with some final thoughts. Let's wave that checkered flag.
It's going to be a drag race all the way back to the start-finish line. No caution. They're side by side, right to the line. Big crash. Here they come. Checkered flag.
The checkered flag is out, and it's time for the final thoughts.
Anything you want to rant, rave, or review? Final thoughts, Caleb Barnes. The floor is yours.
I don't know if I would call it a review, but I thought it was really cool seeing the post about Indianapolis Motor Speedway and them finding the old asphalt, the old bricks underneath. I think history in racing is a really cool thing. I know a lot of people really appreciate that, and especially for a place like the Indianapolis Motor Speedway to be able to dig down and find that old surface of bricks. It is a really cool thing to be able to see, and I believe they're making a documentary about it. Or about kind of some of the history of the track. So I'm really excited to see how that turns out. And I don't know what I would do if I was in their position, because they could totally dig up some of those bricks and try to sell it for a bunch of money and make a ton of money. But at the same time, it's like, that's the old history, the old surface. And you kind of want to leave it alone. Like, you want to be able to document it and say, oh, look at what we found. But then I feel like it's kind of cheap to be like, oh, let's dig it up and make money off of it now. But really cool to see that they found that, and who knows? Maybe it'll inspire them to pave more of the track with bricks. How about we pave all of the straightaways at IMS with bricks, and then we put the asphalt back in the corners? That would make those races a lot more interesting too.
Don't know if that would happen, but interesting. I just want to say, Corey Heim is just on one. He just got another win in the Truck Series, which is not shocking. And I don't know if that's more of an indictment on the Truck Series than how good he is. But boy, oh boy, is Corey Heim that dude. I guess he's locked himself into the round of 6. No, he's locked himself in the championship 4, excuse me. So he's won 9 races. Because they just now... No. Yeah. They're in the next round. See, this is why they're not the exact same. I get confused by it. So they're in a round of 8 now, after New Hampshire. Got it. They'll cut 4 off and go to after Martinsville. Still, 9 wins. Ties the Biff for most in a season in the Truck Series. I think he's going to break it, bold claim, and it would just suck if he doesn't win the championship. And I'll leave it at that. Caleb, anything else you got for the site outside of Stock Car Scoop?
I'm returning to the lawsuit article this week. Samuel's taken it up the last couple weeks, and I'll be on it the next 2 weeks as well, as we keep getting those updates as we get closer to that trial date.
Interesting. All right. Well, I have nothing else. Check out Stock Car Scoop. Check out Through the Gears as well. For at Caleb Barnes _. I'm at TreyLyleVT. Thanks so much to Davey Segal. Signing out for now on this episode of Bringing the Heat.